Okay, everyone. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, it's a good crowd tonight. Welcome to our annual Women's Month. We have a lot of fun with this. We have some great speakers. Kerry's going to come up here and share that with you. Lily's going to come over here and share that. There's one important announcement. We are not allowed to smoke anywhere on this church property. Simple little thing. Please adhere to that. There's some caution tape on the side over there. Nobody's allowed to go across it. Please honor that. Their maintenance department cleans the church for themselves for the Sunday service, and they have it all set up nice. So be mindful of the place. Try not to trash their bathroom and steal anything. You know, it's amazing. They give the keys to a $10 million church to a bunch of alcoholics. You know. And all we got to do is behave ourselves, and we'll be able to have a meeting here. That's a pretty cool deal, right? Anyway, Lily's going to come up, have some fun tonight, and help us polish off that food afterwards.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. My name is Lily, and I'm an alcoholic. So this is a 1-hour speaker meeting, and we meet here every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, at 8:30 p.m. So the purpose of our group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, just simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. So is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce him or herself with the first name? Yes?
Hi everyone, I'm definitely an alcoholic and my name is Angie.
Hi Angie, welcome.
Hi, Colleen, and I'm welcome. She's coming back.
Hi Colleen, welcome. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Fox.
Hi Fox. Welcome.
You're an alcoholic addict. My problem is Alex. I'm visiting.
Great, hi Alex. Hey James, welcome. Okay, yes.
I'm Christian alcoholic. We visit Staten Island.
Yay, Staten Island, great. Yes.
I'm an alcoholic. I'm also visiting from Staten Island.
Great, hi Nick.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm an alcoholic and I'm from Long Island.
Long Island, not Staten Island. Okay. Welcome. So our group, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and would care to sponsor, please raise your hands. Great, that's a lot of people. So if you don't have a sponsor, please hook up with one of these folks after the meeting. And are there any announcements for the good of AA? Yes?
Yeah, my name is Dave and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi Dave.
We're going to announce intergroup, CT intergroups having a gratitude breakfast on Saturday, October 22nd from 9 to 12 at Kennedy Square at the Red Clay Room. It's $20 a ticket. They'll have like some kind of events and stuff there, speaker, and it's good food. So if you're interested, all you got to do is go on the CP website. We're selling tickets right on the CP website of the gratitude breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Adrian? No.
Not right here, but it's not a sanctioned AA.
Okay.
There's flyers on the back table for a big old bonfire with 2 great speakers.
Okay, big old bonfire on the back table. All right. So we have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one free of charge, especially if you help clean up. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who cannot afford one, please put your donations in the jar in the back buffet table. And if you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, please see Ron after the meeting. They're available free of charge, and there is quite a selection of them. And I have asked Teresa to come up and read the AA preamble.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa, I'm an alcoholic. The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organizations, or institutions. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I would like to bring up Carolyn to read the 12 steps.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Carolyn, and I'm an alcoholic. Okay, these are the 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all the persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. And 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. You're welcome, everyone.
I'm back. So we have a 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. So at this time, we'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses such as the coffee, cream, and donuts, the big books and rents, and CD. There's absolutely no smoking, as Ron said, on church property. And this would be a good time to silence all the cell phones and limit movement during the meeting. And now what we have been waiting for, our speaker. She is a very good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, and she's on loan to us from the Friday Night Beginners Group of Tannersville, Pennsylvania. Please help me welcome Kerry C.
Hi, I'm Kerry. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 6, 1994. My home group is the Friday Night Beginners Meeting, and I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor, and I believe in sponsorship. I start every talk with those 3 things, because if I don't put down the bottle, get a home group, get a sponsor, start getting into the steps, I don't have sobriety. You know, I used to hear, meeting makers make it, meeting makers make meetings, step workers stay sober, in my experience. So I want to thank you all for having me. I've actually listened to tapes from this group for years now, and I always see the flyers going through, and I'm always like, man, I never get down here on a Saturday night. Like, I have a kid thing, a husband thing, a school thing, and then like the stars aligned, and I came down, and I'm like one of the cool kids now who get to be like, say, I went to Doylestown. So I want to thank you for having me, because it's, you know, it's always a privilege to be invited somewhere. It's always a privilege to be invited somewhere and be invited back. You know, that was not an often thing for me. You know, that was like kind of an exception rather than the rule. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my story. My story is an atypical story for Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been in AA since I was 13 years old. I got sober. I did not get sober then, but I got sober at 18. So they used to call me a kindergarten crackhead in my home group. You know, so I mean, I am definitely the exception to the rule, right? Because I really am one of the people who are in the Never Had It Legal Club. You know, and I look at that as being an absolute privilege today. Like, it was something that I wasn't sure if I was really happy about. I mean, I definitely was happy about, like, being sober and not having the wreckage and all that other stuff, but I kind of felt like I missed out on some stuff. You know, I was like, damn, like, why did AA actually have to work? Like, I could have, like, definitely, like, drank and partied for a little while longer and then maybe came in here, right? You know, and now that I'm 41 and I'm kind of looking back and, you know, I have been sober for more than half of my life and my kids have never seen me drunk. And I've been married for 23 years, you know, and I've been sober for 23 years. And I look at it that way and I'm like, yeah, I missed absolutely nothing, you know. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. So I was a brat. I came into AA with the express purposes of getting my parents off my back, for meeting a boyfriend who was going to fix me, for having a place to whine, lie, and cry about whatever was bothering me. I used AA like a toilet. I relieved myself once a day, and then I came back the next day to do it again. I had no intention of changing. You know, I used to say all the time, the only thing that's permanent is change, right? You know, it's the only thing that you could absolutely guarantee, right? Change, death and taxes, blah, blah, blah. I used to say stuff like that, but I didn't actually believe it. What I expected was that you were going to fix me. And what I meant by that is that you were going to make all the external problems go away, and that I was not going to have to change anything about who I was. I wasn't going to have to give anything up. I was going to be able to have control out of all the outcomes of the things in my life, and that everybody was just going to be nice to me. I mean, that's what I expected AA to give me. I didn't get any of those things, just so you know. I mean, what I got was, you know, peace, freedom, and happiness, you know. But, so I came here and I really didn't understand what my problem was. In fact, I didn't understand what it meant to be an alcoholic until I was 20 years old. And I was abstinent from alcohol for 2 years. Because I came here and said, like, I'm an alcoholic, because you kind of have to, right? So, like, my drug and alcohol counselor from, like, the 37th rehab I was in, like, told me that I had to, like, they're like, you can't go to those places unless you say you're an alcoholic. So I would come in here and I would, like, raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Kerry, I'm an alcoholic, and I didn't know what an alcoholic was, and I didn't really think I was one, but you tolerated me, you had cookies, people listened to me, I got rides, I met boyfriends. So it was like, you know, the price of admission was to say I was an alcoholic. I didn't think I had an alcohol problem. I thought that I had a sobriety problem. The problem was that sobriety sucked and alcohol was awesome. And I didn't really understand why, you know, I should stop doing that. I know that my family thought that. I'm one of 5 children. Actually, I'm one of 6, but one passed away before I was born. I have 4 of us total have darkened the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the only one who has remained. My one brother came for a couple years, and he found other methods of maintaining abstinence from drugs and alcohol. Those things would not work for me. I have a progressive spiritual illness. He seems to be maintaining fine. I have another brother who smokes crack every 3 to 4 months. He disappears, steals from my wallet, that sort of stuff. And I have a sister who has a lot of pharmaceuticals that support her well-being. So out of all of it, there's only 2 of us who are actually abstinent from alcohol or any mind or mood altering substances. And it's amazing that we're actually the well-adjusted ones in our family, and we're often the ones that people call when stuff's going on. It's like, call Kerry and John. But because I was the baby and I was the youngest, and my parents had been through this with my brothers and sisters, as soon as I started to kind of show up with some of these behaviors, like wine started going missing, and, you know, money started going missing, and I was, you know, found inebriated in the basement at like 11. Like, they started to get worried about me, and so they started bringing me to the shrinks, and the shrinks started saying, hey, you know, she's got some stuff going on. And then the shrinks then sent me to rehabs, and the rehab said, well, you got to go to these 12-step places. And so my parents started, like, dumping me off at, like, church basements with $1, you know, and to come and pick me up an hour later. What I found out was that they didn't check, so I would go in the front door and out the back. I drank in AA meetings. I'm not proud of that, but I did. You know, I brought, like, if you're going to bring me to the AA meeting and force me to do it, then I'm going to drink in the bathroom. So, I mean, I think what's amazing is how much AA has tolerated me over the past 30-something years. I think that's kind of cool. And I'll tell you that had something to do with why I eventually did get sober. You know, because I spent, you know, a couple of years just, you know, being one of those people, the hot mess. And everybody knows that girl. Every home group has that girl. I was that girl. I was the girl who slept with everybody in their home group. I was the girl who stole from the basket. I was the girl who got drunk in the bathroom. I was the girl who would call you at 3 o'clock in the morning telling you that I wanted to kill myself so that you would come and entertain me because I was bored and lonely. I was that girl. I now have a lot of sponsees who were that girl, so, you know, karma, it happens. So, but I was that girl. So I came in and out. I died an alcoholic death more than once in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the things that I didn't do, and one of the things that I'm sure people talked about, but I just didn't hear, was like steps. God. You know, like what I mostly heard was, you know, share how you feel and you'll feel better. And that's why I said that AA was a toilet for me for a long time, because I didn't really understand what AA was. I didn't realize that there was a differentiation between the fellowship and the program of recovery. I didn't really understand that you know, there was actually something I had to physically do. Like, I kind of thought that this was something you got through osmosis. So naturally, I spent a lot of time unhappy and drinking, because, you know, an alcoholic who doesn't understand the nature of their problem and doesn't understand the nature of the solution to the problem is pretty much stuck in the problem, right? And so for a while I thought, you know, I thought sobriety was my problem because sobriety sucked. So drinking seemed like a much better idea. And then after a while, like, I thought I had a drinking problem because drinking became really hard to do. Because something happens, right? Alcohol was the lover that betrayed me, right? It was the only lover that cheated on me that I cared about, right? It was the only one that promised something and then did not deliver in a way that I truly felt at every fiber of my being. And every alcoholic knows that moment when alcohol no longer works, when it's no longer the proper solution, right? When you go to it for that thing, to get that feeling, that thing that you've been yearning for more than anything else in the world, and you put it in your body, and it does absolutely nothing, right? And that moment is a moment of absolute terror, isn't it? And it's terror because now the only solution I have doesn't work anymore. Now, I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for a couple of years at that point, so I thought AA didn't work because I clearly was drinking, right? Because I thought AA was like, you know, an episode of, you know, Dr. Phil, or actually more like Phil Donahue, you know, back in the day, you know, like it was about like talking about my problems. I made stuff up because my problems weren't good enough. You know, so I'd like do research and I'd be like, yeah, like that. And I'd like making stuff up just so I could sound really good and have really juicy problems at the open disgusting meeting that I went to, you know. And so I didn't really get the whole spiritual aspect of this, right? I used to talk about the spiritual part of AA, right? And the old timers would laugh at me because they'd be like, kid, you have no idea. You know, like there's no spiritual part of AA, like AA is a spiritual program of action, like you're clearly missing the point. So I spent years, you know, dying an alcoholic death here, so when alcohol stopped working for me and I was sitting in AA, I mean, quite frankly, I felt completely and totally, utterly lost. Because the one thing that was working wasn't, and the one thing that promised to treat the thing in the first place wasn't working because I didn't understand what it was. So I sat here and I had that thought of, why bother living? So I killed myself at 16 years old and died for 2.5 minutes. My mother found me on the floor. I had a coffee commitment. I had a sponsor. I owned a big book. It probably was like holding open a window or something in my room. You know? On the outside, it looked like I was a good standing member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a home group. Because I missed the entire point of Alcoholics Anonymous. A good friend of mine says that the most insane thing that anyone could do is to go to a 12-step program and not work the 12 steps. It's kind of implicit in the description of it, right? So it's a 12-step program. So it implies that 12 steps should be a part of something you do while you're here. So I worked a no-step program and died. I didn't get sober after that. In fact, I continued to drink for 2 more years. Because that's what happens when you're a real alcoholic. And what I mean by a real alcoholic is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. And the only people who know that they're an alcoholic of the hopeless variety is the people who have tried all the outside things in the human powers to control their alcoholism and find that they failed. Now, we can do that in a lot of different ways, right? We can rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic. We could put down the bottle and see what happens, right? Put down the bottle and not apply any of the spiritual program or the spiritual, any of the actions, anything that AA talks about and see what happens. Do you go insane or do you drink again? Probably both, right? So for me, putting down the alcohol didn't make me better, it actually made me worse. Because then all of the things that I was using to treat all of that spirituality, all of that self-centered fear, that driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, and self-pity, all of those things that were going on inside of me, I had nothing to anesthetize that. So it was just stark, raving pain. And that's how I feel when I don't drink and I don't have God and I don't have AA. So when I say that I'm a hopeless alcoholic, that's what I mean. Is that nothing but a power greater than myself, which I choose to call God because I don't have a better name for it. You can call it Sam, you can call it HP, I don't care. I like he, she, or it. I've used that in the past. In fact, I've talked about God being a hermaphrodite. I don't care what it is. But I think that the one statement is not God, like I'm not God, is the most salient statement that I can make about myself, is that regardless of what your God is, as long as it's not you, you're doing better than you were before. So here I am, in AA, 16, 17 years old, dying, drinking, hating life, can't die, can't live, and nowhere to go. So I was a very angry, unhappy young lady. So, I thought the best thing for me to do was to use some non-conference approved substances and maintain myself while reading the big book and talking about spirituality. That didn't work very well. I met my husband in Alcoholics Anonymous. He had 3 days. He was 24, I was 17. He waited till I was 18 before we went on a first date. He watched me for a couple of weeks. He was like, so when are you going to be 18? And then pretty sure our first date was May 21st. My birthday's May 20th. He waited. He watched me. He's like, So I met him in AA. He was drinking and I was insane. Celebrating, recovery time, celebrating, sobriety time while abusing my prescribed medication because it's prescribed and this is AA. So, you can see where I was at. So I met him and I thought, I can fix you. I have a year of lying about being sober. You have 3 days. You are now living in your girlfriend's basement. Well, ex-girlfriend, because he got kicked out of the apartment for getting drunk and trashing the entire apartment. I think furniture got thrown out the window and some things happened. So she relegated him to the basement. So what I thought was a great idea was that I would move into the basement with him. So I was living in my husband, or soon-to-be husband's, ex-girlfriend's basement. That's the kind of girl I am. And I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. Thank God for that woman, because she actually, when I eventually did get sober, she actually let me stay with her, because that, to me, is what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. So, we're drinking, we're being crazy, bad things happen, as usual. So at this point, my family had completely cut me off. My sister was leaving food on the back deck at my parents' house to feed me. She fed me off the back deck, which I thought I kept thinking it was weird that she would be leaving bags of food. And it was there, and I'm a thief. I stole everything that was not nailed down. So clearly, if you leave a bag of food on the back of the deck, I'm just going to steal it, right? And there'd be money and tampons and vitamins in it. I'd be like, why is Franny leaving vitamins on the back deck? I found out later when I made the amends to her that she was trying to feed me because I had stopped eating. So I'm 18 years old. I'm drinking to the point where I have DTs, and I'm honestly had DTs. Now, I thought that the government had engineered a superflu to kill me. That's what I thought DTs were, because 18-year-olds don't get DTs, right? So I thought that the horrible flu-like symptoms that I was having when in between my drinking bouts was this government-engineered flu to kill me because the government was out to get me. I'm really not kidding about this. It was on my 4-step. So this is me. My sister's feeding me off the back deck. I'm malnourished. I'm 85 pounds. But AA doesn't work. But see, I have this problem that I finally got evicted from the crack house that I was living in. Because apparently bringing in homeless people and drinking night train in the crack house in which they start to steal from the other crackheads who live there, the crackheads were looking down on me because I was an alcoholic. Like, I'm not kidding. Apparently I was too unmanageable for the crack house. Again, I'm not kidding about this. In East Orange, New Jersey. So I was too unmanageable for the crack house. I got kicked out. So then I had to go find somewhere else to go. So this is where I'm starting to, to show up in the rooms again, because I know you all are suckers, right? Because y'all are nice, and you'll give me money, and you'll feed me, and if I have a sob story about how it's not fair, maybe you'll let me stay in your house and I can steal from you, because that was my plan. So I started to come back to the rooms and go to meetings, and this weird thing happened. My last drink was my husband's last drink. It was his birthday. We got some money that we, kind of got off his mother who was in recovery. We cobbled together some stuff, and we went into New York City to do what we did. And we were seriously a mess. And somehow we ended up back down in the basement of his ex-girlfriend's house. When you're really drunk and you really can't walk, you just go to places that you know. So I would get drunk and end up in this poor girl's house. And she'd go down to do her laundry, and I'm passed out on the floor. It's can I get rid of my ex-boyfriend's girlfriend? She keeps showing up here. So, again, I'm passed out on the floor in her basement. And when you've been drinking so much and you're laying on your back and that you really haven't been breathing a whole lot? We've all had those moments, right? When you wake up in the morning and you can feel where now I know what this is. The intercostal muscles, right? In your chest have been actually pulling to try to expand your lungs. Because this is a weird thing, right? You can overdose from alcohol, people don't realize that, but you can. And if you drink enough of it, your brain stops telling your body to breathe. So that happened on the floor of my husband's ex-girlfriend's apartment building. And I woke up in a pile of my old vomit, and I had peed myself again, which was a pretty regular occurrence. I had stopped, I'd started carrying clothes with me to change into, to have clean clothes to wear. I had gotten disposable clothing, things that I would just throw away. So if I peed something, it would just get thrown in the bushes. So all over Kearney, New Jersey was probably clothes that I had some sort of bodily fluid on, would just get tossed. So I woke up in the basement of this floor, and I realized that I had no ID on me. I had a handful of pairs of underwear and a couple pairs of pants in this bag, no money. And that if I had died, I would have been a Jane Doe, because I grew up in the Bluefield, Montclair area of New Jersey, and I was haunting Kearney, New Jersey, which is just a couple miles away, but I don't think my parents would have ever thought to check the morgues in Kearney, New Jersey. And so I realized that no one would know I was dead. I would just be this corpse in this basement that she would find when she went to go do her laundry. Which she was a crazy cat lady who didn't do her laundry a whole lot, so that I could have been dead for a while. So my thought was that I needed to go to an AA meeting, because it was the only place where anybody would care if I was dead or alive. So I walked from Kearney to Lyndhurst, which was about 6 miles, to a 1 o'clock meeting. I probably stole a big book, because that's what we do, right? If I want something, I just take it. I'm sure if I had asked, I did go back and make amends for that, by the way. So I stole a big book, and then I walked another 5 miles to a 5 o'clock meeting. And then I walked another 3 miles to an 8 o'clock meeting. And my husband's ex-girlfriend saw me at this meeting. She remembered that I tended to pass out on her basement floor and invited me into the apartment to stay. And she actually allowed me to stay with her for a couple weeks while I detoxed. And that was when I hatched a plot that the government was trying to kill me, and that it was a super flu, and that I wasn't really detoxing off of alcohol, that I simply I had some sort of engineered bug. She tolerated that. She was very kind to me. And I was really grateful when I got to make amends to her and thank her for that. So I came back to AA to rob somebody, to have a place to stay, and to be able to just get my crap together enough to be able to drink some more. And something weird happened. I didn't drink. It had nothing to do with me. I'd love to tell you that after that moment, this kind woman took me into her apartment one more time, and, I slept on her couch, and I cleaned and cooked, and I did all this stuff, and I got a little job. I was a preschool teacher at that time, by the way. The pants wetting time, I was a preschool teacher, which was really scary, right? So I got a little job at a local preschool. I was nannying a little bit, and I started to clean up a little bit, and this weird thing happened. I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. So my husband and I had to make this choice. Are we going to do this recovery thing, or are we going to die? So we obviously decided to do this recovery thing. So I have a 22-year-old daughter who was born on June 30th, almost exactly 10 months to the day after I got sober. So God definitely did for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because I don't think that if I had her, I would have been able to stay sober. Because I didn't have any steps or God. What I had was my daughter. She became my higher power. And this thing, you can get a human power, higher power, and that can work for a little while. Anyone can do that. Relationships do that. Jobs do that. We all can do that. The problem is that they're not enough to sustain the sufficient change that's necessary for me to have, right? That psychic change, in order for me to be able to actually overcome my alcoholism. So for a period of time, loving my daughter was enough. And there came a point where it wasn't. I was about 2 years sober at that point. I was 2 years sober, and I realized that I was going to drink again. And I loved my daughter more than anything else anything else that I had ever loved. I mean, it was indescribable how much I loved her. And I knew I was going to drink again. So I started to have conversations with my family members, like, if something happens to me, can you take care of my daughter? And I'm talking to my sister, and I'm like, the same one who fed me off the back porch and snuck me vitamins. I'm saying things to her like, hey, Franny, can you, if something happens to me, will you take care of Day? I wrote up a will. So then, at this point I had a sponsor, but she was even crazier than I am. She had several married men that she was dating, one of which was her boss. We hated everyone. We were completely blindly insane. We were filled with hatred and judgment. And at that point I was actually living in Staten Island, So this miracle, the miracle of all miracles that happened to me happened in Staten Island. I'm in my apartment. I had thrown my boyfriend out because I had resentments and I wasn't willing to work on them, and he was a jerk, so he should just live in his car. And my sponsor decided that we were going to go to this meeting and we were going to hate on these people. Because there was a guy who did retreats out there, and he was he was going away to go study in India, with the Dalai Lama. And he had sponsored a bunch of guys who lived in Staten Island. And there was this group, right? It was this suit people group. We hated them. Because they wore suits, they carried big books, they came in swarms, they all said the same thing, right? Whenever they shared, they give their sobriety date, their home group, and my sponsor has a sponsor, and a sponsor has a sponsor, and I believe in sponsorship. And we hated them, because they were happy. I hated them. I wished them death. I would stare holes in them and wish that they would explode. I hated them. So the king of these guys was coming to talk at this group. So we were going to hate them. So we go, and we're at this, it was actually a group called Common Solution. And we go to sit at this group, and there's this guy, and if David Crosby and Captain Kangaroo had sex and had a love child, this is what this guy looks like. A walrus mustache, balding, but the long gray hair, turquoise. Oh my God, and he was talking about amends. And he kept saying this word all. Now, I don't like the word all. I hated these big book people a real lot. I used to call them the Nazis, the automatons, right? This guy looked like a dirty old uncle. Like, I didn't like him at all. And he kept saying this all thing, right? You gotta become willing to make amends to them all. And he kept saying that you're not others. And I didn't understand that because I didn't read the steps, right? Like, I didn't work them at all. Like, I did a 4-step, I did an IKEA inventory, it had 3 columns. Like, I just followed the picture, I wrote it down, then I went to my local priest, read it to him, and he said, "Do you want absolution?" I said, "No, I just wanted to tell you," and I left. Like, that's the step work I did, right? Like, because where I got sober, like, people would be like, "Oh, you do your 5th step by telling weird people on the bus stuff you did." So I just turned somebody on the bus and be like, "Hey," so like, when I was 8, I did some weird stuff behind the garage. I mean, so that's like that, and I thought I was working steps, right? So here's this guy talking about all, right? Make amends to them all, you're not others, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, who the is he? And what does he think he's doing? And how dare you, you David Crosby, Captain Kangaroo bastard, come here and tell me who I have to make amends to? People owe me amends. I need to make amends to myself. I am the primary person. I said this, by the way. This is, I actually raised my hand. And there were all kinds of words that I don't say. I try not to say a whole lot anymore because I'm trying to talk as clean as I want to be. So you can just put in there like all the 4-letter and multiple stuff, right? So lots of, like, because I'm from New Jersey, so like we just say that all the time. Like, it's an exclamation point, it's a period, it's an and, I don't know. So like, this is what we said. So I raise my hand and I tell him, how dare he suggest that I'm not owed amends, that I'm making amends to myself right now, that people owe me amends, because here's the thing, is the people who harmed me should go to the people I have harmed and make amends to them, because it's their fault that I did the things I did. So he left, right? And he didn't like argue with me. He didn't do any of that stuff, right? Because we don't do that when somebody's like that crazy. Like, you just feel really bad for them. Like, because that's the spiritual sickness is coming off you, like the stink off of poop, right? You don't get mad at those people. Like, you're moved with sympathy and pity, because it's like, clearly this person's so broken that it's just like coming out of every fiber of their being, right? So I raise my hand, I say these things, I reveal my brokenness. And his response was to smile, to chuckle, to not argue with me. He didn't even like say anything. He was like, just keep coming back. And I'm like, oh. Because when you say just keep coming back, that's like a middle finger. Like, that's right? That's like when we say like this is getting heated, or you might be right? So like when you say you might be right, that's a way of saying like you're not right. I don't feel like arguing with you because I'm more spiritual than you, right? So when he just smiled and he just did that thing and he just did, keep coming back, I felt like this big. But what he did do is he pulled me aside. I'm 20 years old. I had been in AA for 7 years, and he asked me a couple questions. What happens when you start drinking? I drink? Can you stop once you start? No, why would I want to do that? Have you ever been able to stop on your own power? No. What happens when you're not drinking? Do you feel good? You a little irritable? A little restless? Mildly discontent? A little, right? So he starts asking me these questions. So it's the first time anybody had ever qualified me. Right? We call that qualifying now. We know what that is, right? Where I have a conversation with you and I ask you some questions, and I ask you questions that like kind of sort of identifying characteristics of what it means to be an alcoholic. And I'm saying yes to them, and you say yes to them, right? You don't even know what you're doing. You're already doing a first step. And then I sit down and talk to you about what a first step really is, and what alcoholism really is, what this spiritual solution really is, what the 12 steps really are, right? So you're hooked, and you don't even know you're hooked, right? Because that's how that works. So he asked me those questions. By the questions that he asked, it was clear that he absolutely understood who I was and what was going on inside of me. Now, I didn't see that guy again for 5 more years. When he came back from India, I met him in Queens at Fellowship of the Spirit, New York, And, you know, I like want to grab his leg and say to him, like, I'm standing here today because of you. And he gives me this big hug, and he's like, hi, nice to meet you, and he has no idea who I am. And this is the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, right? We don't know. I don't know what effect I'm going to have on another person. He just had a 5-minute conversation with a crazy, untreated alcoholic, you know, in Staten Island. Went off to India, did what he did, came back, shows up in Queens at a conference. He's my grand sponsor at this point. And I tell him about this story, and he's like, wow, that's interesting. Because that's something that happened every day for this guy. And that's the way our experience is, isn't it? Like, people touch us. You know, people touch us and we touch others, and there's this ripple effect that happens. And this is the beautiful thing about the fellowship of the Spirit. So he took it for absolute granted that, of course, I had this profound conversation with you. That's what I do. I have profound conversations with people. Right? And it was amazing to me. So it all got to come full circle. So I'm standing there with my sponsor and my grand sponsor, and he's my great-grand sponsor, and we're all standing there, and I'm telling him that he saved my life by having a 5-minute conversation with me 5 years before. He's since passed on, but he was a spiritual teacher for me for a very long time. But anyway, so he has this conversation with me. He pulls somebody over and says, look, you gotta bring this girl through the steps. And I start going to a big book study, and I become one of those people, right? Those suit people. And I become one, I sell my soul to the devil, and I join the ranks of the big book Nazis. And I'm grateful for every second I had, for everything that I was taught, for everything. I gave up absolutely everything. Because hating you was what gave me an identity, right? Because I was angry, I was hurt. I didn't understand why it was that everybody else was happy and I wasn't. And what I didn't understand was that happiness wasn't something that just happened. That happiness was an illusion, but peace and serenity was something that I could achieve through an actual experience that I needed to have. So I jumped over the fence and I joined this home group. And I began to carry a message. I got a message and I began to carry a message. So ultimately what happened for me was a few chains of events, a few indistinct conversations. You know, a codependent ex-girlfriend who let her boyfriend's current girlfriend sleep on her couch. A few people from AA who just didn't turn me away no matter how bad I was, no matter how much I lied, no matter how much I cried, no matter how much I stole. They tolerated me simply because they did. You know, a crazy guy who had a 10-minute conversation with me, who handed me a big book and told me where the solution to the problem that I was dying from for years was. And it was in a book that if you want to hide something from an alcoholic, put it in the big book, right? So my experience since then, so that's been, I was 20 years old, now 41, so it's been 21 years, is absolutely indescribable. And I tell my story, I don't always tell my story from the podium because I think it's boring and stupid, but when I actually tell it and I realize how profound it can absolutely be, to go from being the girl who was fed off her back deck by her older sister because I didn't eat, to being a woman who has 4 children, who has a job and education, who carries herself with dignity and self-respect. I mean, that's absolutely inconceivable that a human being can have that profound a change. I mean, those are the things, like, we talk about miracles all the time, right? We take them for granted in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a miracle that we're sober today. It's a miracle that this happened. It's a miracle. But the fact is that when an alcoholic can have that profound a rearrangement of our thoughts, actions, and ideas, and an entirely new set of ideas and conceptions can take over and drive the alcoholic to be better, to be different. That's a miracle. Because we're people who resist change, don't we? Like, I would rather stay sick because it's something that I know than embrace recovery because it's scary. Because I don't know how to do that, right? So what happened for me was that God tricked me into it. He gave me something to love more than I loved myself, long enough for me to be able to get well enough to be able to see that people had something that I didn't have. And then when I was in that moment, in that breaking moment, when the brokenness in me spilled over and that vulnerability was there, someone walked in and handed me a solution. I never looked back. I never looked back. Never once have I doubted the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've doubted myself. There are times when I've doubted God, of course, because doubting is part of what it means to be a human being, but I have never doubted AA, because it has never failed me. Sometimes it doesn't give me what I want, but that's not what it promises us here, does it? It promises me a lot of things, right? AA has a lot of promises. We say 12, but it's got like 132 at last count, something like that. There are promises after each little piece of the steps, right? So there's a segment of the steps, and then there are promises. So there's promises after the third step, right? Because you do something. Finally, you do something. You make a decision to treat the problem. Because at first, we come here for an alcohol problem, and then we realize that we have a sobriety problem, right? And then we realize that we don't really have a sobriety problem. What we really have is a lack of power problem. Once I realize and I recognize that the problem isn't that I drink, and the problem isn't that I think about drinking, the problem isn't that I'm afraid, the problem isn't any of those things, the problem is that I lack the ability to be able to live up to my values. I have moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I can't live up to them. I have ideas of a person I want to be, ideals, and I have them, but I can't make them matter when self-centered fear is on me. So lack of power is my dilemma. So I have to find a power by which I can live, and that's what this program is about. It's about finding and gaining access to that power. So I'm not a powerless alcoholic. I want you to understand that. I'm not powerless because I actually have access to a power greater than myself, which is working in my life. Does it mean that I can drink successfully? No, because drinking successfully for me is not drinking. Because that's the only way that I can be a successful alcoholic. So for me, I have a very different relationship with alcohol. See, something happened inside of me. Something happened because of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you put a bottle of vodka and a bottle of bleach on the table in front of me, they mean the same thing to me. They're poison. I recoil from them like a hot flame. I no longer look at alcohol like it has a solution to anything today. The only thing that I look to for a solution for anything in my life today is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the power of God working in my life. Now that happened through experience. It didn't happen through thinking about it. I'm not somebody who can think my way into a better way of behaving, because clearly trying to do that for years didn't work for me. It was a matter of taking direction. And that's something that's important and something to understand. It's like you don't have to understand the 12 steps in order to have them work in your life. In fact, the more I tried to understand the 12 steps, actually, the more I missed the point. I can't tell you what it was or the things that I can go back and because, how do I put this way? Life is lived forward and it's understood in reverse. So in the moments that I was having these profound experiences, I didn't realize how profound they are. But when I reflect back on them, I can look at them and say, it was an amazing, amazing experience. And I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with a sponsee today, and she's on amends. And she's having some panic and having some issues. And I pointed out to her that, when we're doing amends, we try to do this thing where we, look at the people that we hurt that are closest to us and start making amends there. Because I don't know about you, I want to do the amends that the Gucci amends. I want to do the amends that make me look good. So I'm going to come back to AA, make amends to you people. I'm going to go do this, that, and the other thing. But I'm not going to go to the parents that I stole from. I'm not going to go back to the people that I devastated over and over again, because that doesn't make me feel good, does it? So I was talking to her about it, and I was pointing out to her that maybe she should start making some amends to her family, instead of making some of these other amends to people in AA, because, maybe that's really where the real harm was caused here. And then I started talking to her about it, and we were talking about, she's like, well, if I make amends to my family, what happens if they don't change? And I said, well, it really doesn't matter if they change. I said, the amends isn't really about them at all, it's about you. And I told her the story about my brother. So my older brother, the one who's still sober today, he had a little anger problem, a little bit, right? So my dad is a very angry Irishman. He raised some very angry Irishmen. So violence, hitting was real common in my family. So violence was just kind of a way of life. When people fought on the lawn, it was the Cosgrove party, So my brother was really violent. And I was a lot younger than him, so there were a lot of times when I would get kind of caught up in the melee. And sometimes it would be my two brothers and my sister and my dad, they'd all be fighting. And usually my sister's boyfriends and my brother's girlfriends would be jumping on people's backs. And it was this whole thing, very shameless. Just, yeah, that's my family. So, I'm really not kidding. So that's kind of going on. So like a lot of times like I kind of get caught up in the melee, and there were a couple times I got knocked downstairs, had some bad things happen, yada yada. I had a lot of resentment towards my brother. And I was about 4 years sober when I made amends to him because I was unwilling to make amends. And I had gone through the steps of him, because I kept restarting the steps, right? Like when you get to the amends you don't want to do, you start running into the 4 steps so you can add some amends, right? And it's kind of like sourdough bread. You just keep, putting the amends down at the bottom of the. So my sponsor figured out that I was doing that. So she asked me to put a bottle next to my big book and say, which is easier, die an alcoholic death or make amends to my brother? I was like, amends? So I went and made amends to my brother. And nothing happened. I made amends. He looked at me like I was crazy. Because my brother hadn't gotten to that point in AA. Like, he just did a lot of meetings. I don't think he actually had worked the steps, so I didn't think he really understood what I was doing. But he just kind of looked at me weird. He said, thank you. And nothing happened. And things were like, there was nothing, there was no relationship between him and I. And it was like I wasn't even his sister. Like, and a lot of times, like, he would forget that I existed. It would be, like, really funny. They'd all be doing something and be like, oh yeah, like, Kerry's my sister too. Like, I probably should invite her. And that would really hurt me. And I would cry over it, and I'd write inventory, and I'd pray, and this would happen. And over the years, like, I just kind of accepted this as where my brother was. And I kind of realized that a lot of the reason why he behaved the way he did was the anger towards himself, the guilt. Like, nobody really wanted to look at, like, the little kid you beat the crap out of. And he just wasn't in a place where he was ready to deal with that. And so I had to realize that he wasn't doing things to me, he was doing things for him. It really wasn't about me. So I began to just love him as he was. And so I'd show up to family things and just love my brother. And I would show up for his kids, and I would show up for his wife, and I would just be a good sister. That was it. Just be a good sister. So I'm about 19 years, 20 years sober, and I'm at a family vacation. And over the years, like, I just warmed up. Like, it just wasn't a good sister. Like, I'd just show up for Thanksgiving at his house, bring a pie and a smile. And I would show up for his kids' parties, and I would just do that. And I'd just be good to my parents, be good to my brothers and sisters, and just be a good sister. And so I'm at a family vacation, and I think we're rafting down the Delaware. And my brother turns to me and he tells me about how much he loves my children. Because I have 3 boys and 1 girl, and I have these boys, they're nuts. But they're awesome, they're like crazy awesome, but they're like country boys, and they're like rough and tumble, and they're Seamus, Connor, and Rowan, so I got like a little soccer team, and they're like great kids, and they're like really excited, Boy Scouty kind of kids. So like whenever we go to do stuff as a family, like my kids have never lived in a house where people have been drinking, they've never lived in a house where there is abuse, they've been loved, they've been valued, they've been listened to. They go to AA meetings. They go to my home. One was at my home group last night. I mean, like, that's just the way we live. So, they're just these great kids. And my brother puts his arm around me and tells me how much he loves my children. And how he sees me and my children. Like, the child I was. And he has this absolute love for my son, Seamus. And he just was telling me about what a good mother I was. So, I made amends at 4 years sober. I'm 21 years sober. And my brother puts his arm around me and says he's proud of me as my brother. I don't know what the amend or what the relationship's supposed to look like. That's not my business. My business is to show up in the way that God directs me, the way that the program directs me, and to be loving and tolerant and kind to those around me, to be the best example of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can be. So I wanted a brother my whole life. I wanted my relationship with my brother back. I wanted that. I didn't get that. And that was okay for me. But my brother is a wonderful uncle to my children. In fact, my brother found my son his first car. That's the relationship that my brother needed to have with me. Not with me, not for me, and what felt good for me, but how it was supposed to be in God's world, which was through my children. So I put all these expectations and demands, and I say, this is what this is supposed to look like. This is what that's supposed to look like. This is how everybody has to show up for me to fit my ideas. Well, my ideas are usually grounded in something, in selfishness, silent demands, judgments, expectations. And it's not really for me to make those on you or on me. You know, one of the greatest statements I ever heard was, everybody has the right to be wrong, including ourselves. And the idea that, and that's really, when we talk about the sick man's prayer, right, we're talking about the resentment prayer, we say, God, please help me to see that they're sick just like me, patient, tolerant, blah, blah, blah. That's really what we're saying, right? Everybody has the right to be wrong, including ourselves. It's saying that when I do things that hurt other people, I'm not doing it because I'm well, I'm doing it because I'm broken. And every single human being on the face of the earth has brokenness. We have our own brokenness, and we treat it the way that we treat it. We treat it with alcohol. That's what makes us alcoholics, right? You know? And we have come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we've treated that brokenness with Alcoholics Anonymous, with the 12 steps and with the power of God. So I've been given that blessing that a lot of people just don't have. I don't look down on them because I'm so spiritual. I look at them with my heart and my soul and recognize that I've been given a gift. And I value it for what it is. I value it because I can see into the hearts of other people. Because I'm not so blocked by my expectations, by my own demands, by my ideas about what it should or shouldn't be. Now, I began to see that stuff in my 4th and 5th step. I began to recognize the ideas, recognize the silent demands, the expectations, the fears that I had that perpetuated this separation between you and me. And that separation has closed with practicing 10, 11, and 12. More specifically, the 12th step. Because you can't sit across your kitchen table talking about God and the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous without experiencing that communion of one soul with another. The Oxford group has a statement. It says that the light of God shines greater through 2 windows than 1. Meaning that when 2 people come together with the intention of sharing a spiritual experience, that it is more powerful with the we than the I. The most important word in 12 steps in the big book on the wall is the word we. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous, it's the word we. Because that word is the most salient word in every piece of literature we have. It implies a couple different things. 1, we are Alcoholics Anonymous. My first step was somebody else's 12th step. Somebody else carried a message to me. And I experienced the first step at 20 years old in that synagogue off of Richmond Avenue in Staten Island, New York, at this terrible meeting full of people that I absolutely hated. A bunch of old men carrying books, wearing suits. And mind you, at that time I had a green mohawk and I had piercings in my face, and I hated everybody. We're Doc Martens. So for me to go to the suit meeting was like selling my soul to the devil. Actually, I had already done that in my drinking. He gave it back. But in that moment, something absolutely profound happened to me. And the thing is that I became a member of the we. In that moment, I had joined Alcoholics Anonymous. I was no longer outside of it. I wasn't around it. I was that dot in the center, right? We talk about it all the time. In our little 90-day pin, we have that little circle in the triangle. We have the dot in the middle, right? I'm that old that I remember the circle in the triangle, and I make my sponsees write it in their big book to remember exactly what this is. And the dot in the middle is when I am in all 3 legacies, right? When I am in the traditions, when I am in the steps, and when I'm in the concept of part of the unity, right? When I'm one of the we. I'm that dot in the middle. So when I had that moment, that first step experience, I became a member of the we. So the we is us. The we can also be you, me, and God. So the we can be a rather profound concept, can it? So when we talk about it and when I say to you that my first step is somebody else's 12th step, and my 12th step is somebody else's first step, and my personal recovery depends on AA unity, and AA unity depends on my personal recovery. So we like to think about things in linear things, right? Because we use steps as a heuristic. We say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's like a ladder, right? No, it's more than anything else. It's experienced in a spiral. My experience is that I come back around to different things and different experiences. And I have a similar experience, but I'm bringing with it my past experience. So whatever experience I'm having is my past experience with whatever experience I'm having now. So I never had the same experience twice. And each time I come through the steps, each time I come through each one of these concepts, every time I come to this new place of surrender and understanding, I'm bringing with it everything that I've experienced before and everything that I will experience. So for me, the steps are experienced in this spiral that's spreading outward. So I go back and around and come back through again and again as I shed the things that block me off from my usefulness to God and my fellows. So for me today, being part of that we is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. It's better than being married. It's better than having my children. It is the greatest, most profound experience in my life, and it's something that I hope that I never let go of. I hope that I never get to the point where I feel like I don't need Alcoholics Anonymous, because my experience has been that my life is dependent upon my constant thought of you, my ability to apply these principles to my daily life, and to live in conscious contact with my Creator. And the only way I'm going to do that is by remaining one of the we and being a part of this wonderful, wonderful community, not just here in this church, but everywhere. Because that's what this is about. It's about, can I carry this experience everywhere that I go and everything that I do? I want to thank you so much for having me, and I hope that I brought you an atypical message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
Let's thank Kerry one more time. Next week, we have Anne Marie B. coming in from Roselle, New Jersey. It will be epic, of course, to close out this annual Women's Month. We got five great women, and we're so blessed. We made more coffee, so if you want some more coffee, there's a meeting after the meeting. Here's the real tricky part. We have to put the chairs way up there, but we have to leave 7 rows with 5 across. You get that? On each side. Anyway, we have a nice way of closing. See you next week. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. Thanks for coming out.